Hi, in this video, we're going to talk about Vlookups, Hlookups, and if formulas. But before we do that, we're going to quickly talk about cell referencing. And the reason we're going to talk about cell referencing is it's really important and it does come in handy when you're doing your Vlookups and Hlookups to understand how cell referencing works. All cell referencing means is that we're either going to reference a specific cell, a specific column, or a specific row. And that means as we drag a formula down or across, it's always going to look at that same cell, column, or row that we've talked about. Now, to put absolute cell referencing in place, it's really easy. All we have to do is use our dollar signs on our cell reference. So we'd either put it in front of the column reference, in front of the row reference, or in front of the column and the row reference to give an absolute cell. So let's jump straight in and look at a few examples of how it works. So in this top example, as I drag my formula down, I want to look at the different bolts sold, but I always want the price to be 73 cents. So what I'm going to do is type the equal sign on my keyboard, then I'll select the bolt sold, multiply that by the price of it. Now, a quick handy hint here, you can put the dollar signs in manually in front of the E and in front of the 4 to make sure it's always referencing cell E4. However, the other option is to just hit F4 on your keyboard, and that's going to automatically put the dollar signs in front of both for you. If you didn't want an absolute cell reference and you were hoping for just a row reference, you could hit F4 again and it will change it just to be the row. And again, if I hit it once more, it will just be the column. If you hit it a fourth time, it will take it off completely. And if I hit it a fifth, it will go back. So you can see here, I've got those dollar signs in front of the E and the 4, which means it's always going to reference cell E4. I'll hit enter and my formula is in there. Now, the really cool thing about this now is I can drag that formula all the way down, and while it will change the number of bolts sold, it will continue to look at that same price each time. So really easy there. Now, this example down the bottom is a little bit trickier. What I want to happen is I always want to reference this cell, so cell B15, as I drag my formula across. But as I drag my formula down, I want it to reference cell C10, but then change over here the dollar amount. Now, you could manually do it on each row, but that's really time consuming. So we're going to here use a mixture of looking at our absolute column references and our absolute cell references. It's just really important that we think about what we're doing. So I'm going to put my equal sign in, and first I'll click on that price. And this is where I want to really think about what I'm doing. So I'm going to drag this formula across, but as I drag it across, I always want it to look at column B. That means for me when I drag it down, it will change the row to 16, 17, and 18. But as I drag it across, it's not going to be moving from B to C to D. So again, I'm just going to go function, or I'm going to hit my F4 button. I don't want that because that one will mean it's always looking at cell B15. That's not going to help me as I'm trying to drag my formula down. I don't want it to always reference row 15 because that means as I drag my formula down, it's not going to pick up the other prices. What I want is for it to always reference, again, that column B. So I'll put my multiplication sign in, and now I'm going to click on the quantities. And again, I'm just going to F4, and this time I always want it to reference row 14, but I want it to change columns as I drag across. So I'll hit enter. And the really cool thing about this is I can drag my formula down. As I come right to the bottom, you can see here I'm referencing cell B18, but still looking at C14 at the top. And if I highlight all of that, I can drag it all the way across as well. And you can see any cell I pick, I'm always getting that correct amount in there. So it's just a really handy tool to always make sure you're looking at the right amount. Let's move on to a VLOOKUP. I love VLOOKUPs and I honestly use them all the time. If not once a day, at least a few times a week. The V in a VLOOKUP stands for a vertical lookup. So what it means is it's actually going to look through all the columns in a table. If your table was sort of flipped around, so you had your headings over here as rows and then the information in each column, that's where you'd be looking at a HLOOKUP, which is the next thing we're going to look at. My top tip for you when you're doing a VLOOKUP, I've got two. So make sure that you have a unique identifier. So your VLOOKUP is taking information from one table and populating it into another table. A really good example of where I've used this is I had a candidate database that had thousands of candidates' addresses in it. I needed to send letters out to specific candidates and I had their candidate ID. Rather than having to manually look up each one of those candidates, I popped their candidate ID in a table like this, and then I just did my VLOOKUP into my huge database. It saves a lot of time and effort doing a VLOOKUP that way. So like I was saying, make sure you've got a unique identifier, and this needs to be across both of your tables. Then, now this is the most important thing and where a lot of people get tripped up, is make sure that your unique identifier is in the leftmost column of the table you're looking the information up in. The example we're looking at today is actually a really easy example because we start over here in column A, but you don't have to. You could actually start, over here in column J. Your table could go from J to P. The only thing you need to make sure of is that unique identifier is always in the leftmost column from the table that you're starting on. But let's get started on our VLOOKUP. So the first thing I want to look up in this table is the employee's name. So I'm going to go equals on my keyboard and type the word VLOOKUP. If you're typing something in Excel, you've popped your equal sign in and you're not seeing this little pop-up box come up with the word, just check your spelling. You've probably spelt something wrong. Now I'm going to open bracket, and once I do that, I get this neat little thing here in Excel, which is popping up to tell me how I do my formula and what step of the formula I'm up to. So the bold value is the step that you're currently on. Each time you put a comma in, it's going to move you to the next step. So step one is the lookup value. What value are we going to look up in that other table? So in this case, it's my employee ID. So I'm just going to click on that, and that's going to pull it in. Then I'll put a comma in, and you can see now I've moved across to table array. All that means is, where do you want to look this information up? So I'm going to click on VLOOKUP table, and I want to look it up in this table here. So I'm just going to hold my left click on down and drag it all the way across to that table. Now, this is where the absolute cell referencing comes in handy. Because you don't necessarily know that the order of your employee IDs is in the same order, if you don't put absolute cell referencing in here, as you drag your formula down, you're actually going to start looking at the next row, the next row, the next row. So it means that you might miss out on some information. So top tip here, do your F4 and get those dollar signs in, so it's always going to look at this specific table. All right, once you've done that, pop that comma in again, and we'll move to the next step, which is column index number. Now this one's a little bit of a tricky one, and this is where a lot of people get confused. Column index number is just simply a count from where you've started. So what we're saying is ID over here in column A, this becomes column 1. And you need to count how many columns from your unique identifier is the information that you want. I don't know why Excel doesn't just let you put the column that you want in. One of my reasons that I suspect they don't let you do it is because you can have a table built anywhere. You know, you might be pulling information from a table that's over here in P and Q, and you just have to type 2. You don't need to worry about sort of what that column is there. So if we do a count, we've got employee ID here. We're looking for the name of the employee. So I'm going to go 1, 2. So I want the second column. So I'm just going to type the number 2 in, and then I'll put a comma. And you can see I've moved to the very last step, which is range lookup. And for everything we're doing, because we know everything is a perfect unique identifier, we are just going to type the word false. Close our bracket and hit enter. And you can see I've got that employee's name appearing there, and I'm just going to drag that one down, and the rest of my employee names have appeared. So really easy to do and really quick, you know, particularly if you're going from a table with lots of information and you're still looking for a lot more information as well. We'll do one more together here just to make sure you get the hang of it. So this time we're looking for our site induction date. So we're just going to go equals Vlookup and open that bracket. Again, our lookup value will be our unique identifier. So I'll select that, pop a comma in. My table array, so I'm going back to my Vlookup table. I'm going to select the whole table, and I'm going to go F4 to make it a constant. I'll pop my comma in. My column index number, so this time I'm looking for the site induction date. So 1, 2, 3. Type the number 3 in, put another comma, and then I'll type the word false. And that's pulled up the date for you. So that's how you do a Vlookup. The next thing we're going to look at is a Hlookup. Now, a Hlookup is very similar to a Vlookup. It's exactly the same steps. The only difference is instead of looking at columns, we're looking at rows. So let's start. Again, we're going to look for the name, and all of the top tips that I've said for the Vlookup still apply. So we still want to make sure we're using our absolute cell referencing. And we still need to make sure that our unique identifier is right at the top. So this time, rather than being in the leftmost column, we want it to be in the topmost row. So we'll look for the name. So we're going to go equals Hlookup, and the H just stands for horizontal. Open that bracket, click on the lookup value. I'll pop a comma in, move to my table array. So I'm going to come to my table over here. I'll select my whole table. And again, I'm going to go F4 just to make those cells a constant. I'll pop a comma in. So rather than counting the columns this time, we'll count the rows. So employee ID is row 1. Full name is row 2 for me. So I'm just going to type in 2. And again, type the word false and close brackets. And you can see the same way I'm getting those names exactly the same. We'll practice again for our site induction. So again, it's equals Hlookup, open bracket. We're going to select that unique identifier, put our comma in, move across to our table array, select our entire table, and F4 that to get that to be a constant, put a comma in. So our site induction this time is row 1, 2, 3. So I'll type the number 3 in and then type false and hit enter. Easy as that. So that's a Vlookup and a Hlookup. The last thing we're going to talk about in this video is an if formula. Now, an if formula is an incredibly powerful thing. There are so many things you can do with an if formula. You can base formulas within formulas. It's really, really handy. All we are looking at today is a really basic if formula just to get you in the hang of how to use an if formula and things you might want to do. Something that we are going to do in this if formula, and I haven't talked about it previously, is we are going to get Excel to type some text in for us. And I'll talk about it when we get there, but there's just a few key things you need to know when we're typing in text, and that is we actually have to put our quotation marks in. So there, just type it up here so you can see, they're these little marks. And when we type quotation marks within a formula in Excel, it's just saying to Excel, hey, I'm going to type some text here. This has nothing to do with a formula. But let's get started and do this if formula. So I'm going to click in the cell I want the if formula to appear and equal sign to say, hey, I'm going to do a formula. And then just type the word if and open bracket. And just like with our Vlookups and our Hlookups, again, I've got this little cheat sheet here that tells me what step I'm up to and what I need to do. Step 1 is our logic test, and this is just simply, well, what are we looking for? What are we testing to see if it's true or if it's false? The world is your oyster here. You could do so many formulas within this formula. You can make this as complicated as you want. For this example though, all we want to happen is anybody who has a mark over 25, we want it to say that they've passed. And if it's 25 or under, we want it to say that they have failed. So what we are going to do is say, if it's over 25, say pass, anything else is a fail. So my logic test will be, I'm going to click in this first cell here, and then I'm going to put my greater than sign and type 25. So that's my logic test. So is that greater than 25? It's really simple. If I had this somewhere else in Excel, it would either say true or false. Instead of saying true or false, so I'm going to tell it what value to give. So I've put my comma in now, and I've moved to the value if true. So all I wanted to do if that's true is say the word pass. Now to get that to happen, I need to put my quotation marks in. Then I can type my word, and I can type whatever I want in here at the moment. I can put spaces in, I could type a whole sentence. All I'm going to do is type the word pass though, and just close that with another quotation mark. Then I'm going to put a comma. And now I move to, well, what happens if this is false? If I don't pass this test, if it's not greater than 25, I just want it to say the word fail. So I'm going to, again, put that quotation mark in, type the word fail, close that quotation mark, and that's it. That's my if formula done. So I'll just close the bracket and hit enter. So you can see here this mark is under 25, so it's coming up as a fail. If I click in that cell and drag that formula all the way down, I can see here this one was over 25, it's 36, so it was a pass. This one down here, exactly 25, so it's showing as a fail. Now, the great thing about this formula and doing something like this is Excel will automatically update anything you want to change. So say you've made a mistake here. It's saying 5, but it should be 35. So at the moment, it's a fail. If I update that to 35, automatically changes to a pass. Like I said, this is a really basic if formula, but if you understand the basics and you understand some of the other formulas that we've been learning, then it's really handy and you can really build upon this. Thanks for watching.